And so this is Ezra 3, 1 through 13. It says this: in early autumn, when the Israelites had settled in their towns, all the people assembled in Jerusalem with a unified purpose. Then Jeshua, son of Jehozadak, joined his fellow priests and Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, with his family in rebuilding the altar of the God of Israel. They wanted to sacrifice burnt offerings on it, as instructed in the law of Moses, the man of God. Even though the people were afraid of the local residents, they rebuilt the altar at its old site. Then they began to sacrifice burnt offerings on the altar to the Lord each morning and evening. They celebrated the festival of shelters as prescribed in the law, sacrificing the number of burnt offerings specified for each day of the festival. They also offered the regular burnt offerings and the offerings required for the new moon celebrations and the annual festivals as prescribed by the Lord. The people also gave voluntary offerings to the Lord. 15 days before the festival of shelters began, the priests had begun to sacrifice burnt offerings to the Lord. This was even before they had started to lay the foundation of the Lord's temple. Then the people hired masons and carpenters and bought cedar logs from the people of Tyre and Sidon, paying them with food, wine, and olive oil. The logs were brought down from the Lebanon mountains and floated along the coast of the Mediterranean Sea to Joppa, for King Cyrus had given permission for this. The construction of the temple of God began in mid-spring during the second year after they arrived in Jerusalem. The workforce was made up of everyone who had returned from exile, including Zerubbabel, son of Shealtiel, Jeshua, the same guys we just talked about, son of Jehozadak, and his fellow priests, and all the Levites. The Levites who were 20 years old or older were put in charge of rebuilding the Lord's temple. The workers at the temple of God were supervised by Jeshua with his sons and relatives, and Kadmiel and his sons, and all descendants of Hodaviah. Oh, these names. They were helped in the task by the Levites of the family of Henadad. When the builders completed the foundation of the Lord's temple, the priests put on their robes and took their place to blow their trumpets. And the Levites, descendants of Asaph, clashed their cymbals to praise the Lord, just as King David had prescribed. With praise and thanks, they sang this song to the Lord. This is a song you hear over and over again in the Bible. He is so good. His faithful love for Israel endures forever. Then all the people gave a great shout, praising the Lord, because of the foundation of the Lord's temple had been laid. But many of the older priests, Levites, and other leaders who had seen the first temple wept aloud when they saw the new temple's foundation. The others, however, were shouting for joy. The joyful shouting and weeping mingled together in a loud noise that could be heard far in the distance. So my son Judah is a junior. Feels weird to say. He's a junior. One more year. And I almost said I'm not an emotional guy. I couldn't get away with that here. I cry all the time. But I don't think I normally am. I'm getting, I don't know, it's that change in life, I guess. Something's happening. I am warm. But I always thought I'd be the dad that's like, all right, you're 18, get out of here. I hate that he's getting older, but I know it's good. I hate it. I want him around. I love him. But he's 17, and he's at the place now where we need to start thinking. He needs to start thinking, where am I going? What's my plan? What am I doing? And so we'll probably meet maybe for breakfast, maybe Tommy's, something. See, me and Lucy are like this. Judah had a basketball game at Zilla. It's like an hour and 45 minutes away. Lucy gets nothing out of going to basketball games. And her poor Lucy, her whole life is just sitting in the bleachers while her brothers are playing basketball. And we're like, do you want to go or do you want to stay home? And she's like, where are you eating dinner? I'm going. Like, she'll endure for the right food. I'm kind of like, we're going to meet. Where should we eat? So anyway, we're going to meet. And I'm not going to tell him what he should do. And I'm not going to ask him, what do you think you should do? Here's how the process will go. Judah, I want you to imagine you're at your favorite place, where you feel the most at peace, the most like, oh, I could just live here forever. Maybe it's the beach in Mexico when we go visit Grammy Poppy. I don't know where it is, but that place, your favorite place, you're sitting there just by yourself. It's so peaceful, so quiet. And Jesus comes, walks in, and he sits down across from you, knee to knee, and he looks you straight in the eye. He grabs your face, and he begins to tell you who you are. What does Jesus say? I don't care what Judah's plan for his life is. I don't care what my plan for his life is. Who are you? Who does Jesus say you are? Because that's your true identity, right? And then what you do flows from that place of identity. If you get the identity thing right, you'll probably get the plan thing right. So I would say the plan thing starts with who are you? When I moved here, never done this before, the first several years, I felt this pressure to have like a vision, have a 10-year plan for the church, all this stuff. And I wrote stuff. But eventually, once I got kind of comfortable in my skin, I really felt strongly from the Lord, why are you trying to figure out what you're supposed to do when you don't even know who you are? And so I said, you know what? I'm not saying vision's not important, but I'm saying culture and identity eats vision for breakfast. If we get who we are right, what we do just happens. It flows. And so here we have God's covenant people coming out of slavery, where they had lost everything. God had abandoned them. At least that's what it felt like to them. They've lost their homes. They lost their temple. They lost their customs. They were enslaved. They even lost their names. And this lasted for about 70 years. So these people rebuilding Jerusalem probably were born in exile. They were called by Babylonian names. They'd never seen a temple. They'd never seen a priest in his priestly robes. They didn't have an identity. They were Babylonians. They probably felt abandoned. They probably felt disqualified, but they weren't disqualified from God's plan. He was preparing them. And he still has this big, beautiful purpose for them. But before they can walk in it, God wants to deal with the residue of exile. So here's my premise. Exile mars our identity. Our identity shapes how we approach our purpose, and that purpose, let me say it again. Exile mars our identity. Our identity shapes how we approach our purpose, and worship shapes our identity. John Ortberg, in the book, The Life You've Always Wanted, he said this: we don't believe our way into new behavior. We behave our way into new belief. But the behavior must be rooted in a new identity. You want to do a certain thing, you've got to believe a certain thing, and you've got to believe a certain thing about who you are. So when God's people came out of exile, they didn't start with walls. They didn't start with houses. They started with the altar. The story I just read, they had no homes. Their city was not fortified. They had no walls. And they said, we're building an altar. Because identity is lost in exile and found in worship. And once we remember whose we are, everything else we build flows from that place of belonging. The seasons are shifting for this church. And it's time to shake off the residue of exile. It's time to shake off the residue of disappointment. It's time to shake off the residue of betrayal, of unmet expectations, of hurt, of pain. And step into a new identity. We all go through seasons of exile. Their story was exile because of their sin. And some of us, if I'm honest, most of the time that I end up in exile, it's because I made some stupid choice and put myself there. But we all go through seasons of disappointment. We all go through dry seasons. Man, one of the most helpful things I ever heard a preacher say was that it's actually normal to go through dry seasons. But here's what I've come to believe. Let's say your exile looks like losing a job or losing a marriage or whatever, losing your health. The enemy's not after your health. He's not after your marriage. He's not after your job. He's after your identity. Exile is an identity crisis. Exile is an identity crisis. That's why the first things the Babylonians did was say, yeah, we're changing your name. And we're changing your diet. You're going to eat what we feed you. We're going to eat what we eat. You're not going to worship the way you worship. In fact, we're going to erect this huge statue and we're going to make you worship it. And they went after their identity. And side note, as a Christian, there is a table prepared for you by culture. And if you have no problem eating everything culture has to offer, I question who you are. If you'll just eat whatever pop culture serves up to you, you've lost your identity. Exile is an identity crisis. This exile was a result of God's people forgetting who they were because ultimately they forgot who He was. They stopped worshiping Him. They stopped trusting Him. And worship reorients the people of God back to divine order. Oh yeah, He's God, I'm not. He's God, I belong to Him. And identity seems to be the thing God is dealing with in this exile. I'm going to read off for you. There's several of the prophets, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, they're prophesying to the people of God about this coming exile, and they're preparing them for it. We like to quote Jeremiah 29:11, but we don't understand the context of it. Read the whole book. He's the weeping prophet for a reason. His message is really bad news. You're going to be captured. You're going to be taken, and this is from the Lord. So all these prophets are giving them a clue. This is why you're in exile. This is the purpose God has for you in exile. Listen to this. I'm just going to rattle these off really fast. Jeremiah 7:23. But this command I gave them, obey my voice, and I'll be your God, and you shall be my people. And then Jeremiah 11:4. Obey my voice and do according to all that I command you. So shall you be my people, and I'll be your God. 24:7, I'll give them a heart to know that I'm the Lord, and they shall be my people, and I'll be their God. Jeremiah 30:22, and you shall be my people, and I'll be your God. 31:1, at that time declares the Lord, I'll be the God of all the clans of Israel, and they shall be my people. 31:33, I'll put my law within them, and I'll write it on their hearts, and I'll be their God, and they shall be my people. Jeremiah 32:38, and they shall be my people, and I'll be their God. Ezekiel 11:20, that they may walk in my statutes and keep my rules and obey them, and they shall be my people, and I'll be their God. 14:11, that the house of Israel may no more go astray from me, and they shall be my people, and I'll be their God. 36:28, you shall dwell in the land that I gave to your fathers, and you shall be my people, and I'll be your God. 37:23, they shall not defile themselves anymore, but I'll save them from all their backslidings in which they have sinned, and will cleanse them. And they shall be my people, and I'll be their God. 37:27, my dwelling place shall be with them, and I'll be their God, and they shall be my people. Zechariah 8:8, I'll bring them home. I'll bring them home, and they shall be my people, and I will be their God. exile was about who he is and who they were. Have you ever heard a preacher say, pay attention when Jesus or when God says something 3 times? He's like, hello, Israel. I'm your God and you're my people. So in exile, they forgot whose they were. This goes way back when he delivered them from Egypt. In Deuteronomy 7:6, he says to them, he's just pulled them out, and now they're in the wilderness. He's making them a people, and he says, for you are a holy people who belong to the Lord your God. Of all the people on the earth, the Lord your God has chosen you to be his own special treasure. And I have a feeling in exile, they're saying, God, I'm not exactly feeling like a special treasure. We've been abandoned. You've forgotten us. Our identity is lost and our future is gone. He says, no, you're my special treasure. In our culture, special has 2 meanings, right? Like, I was preaching in Sacramento, and I was actually preaching this message to the church in Sacramento, and I said special has 2 meanings. Like, I got to preach in Sacramento, which is very close to San Francisco, the Sunday after we kicked their butts. It was pretty awesome. So I got up and I said, special has 2 meanings. Like yesterday, Saturday, was very, very special for me. Special, like, oh, precious. And then there's special, like, like the size of bus you rode to school. Like, oh, bless her heart, she's special. And then I wonder if Israel's like, is that what he's talking about? Is there something wrong with us? In Babylon, I think they're feeling special. Instead of a kingdom of priests and a holy nation, they adopted Babylonian names, diets, ambitions, and fears. They allowed exile to redefine their reality. Ezekiel 32:20 says, you say, we want to be like the nations all around us who serve idols of wood and stone. Again, Ezekiel's talking about this exile people. He said, hey, you're saying I want to be like everyone else. Forget this special treasure thing. Have you ever felt that? Like sometimes with my kids, I'm like, hey, you're a leader. Leaders don't do that. And sometimes they're like, well, I don't want to be a leader. I want to get to do that. And sometimes there's a cost to being special. And I think Israel just got to where we don't want to be special. Just let us be like everyone else. And in exile, Babylon's God seemed stronger. They can't see Yahweh, but they got this giant statue of Nebuchadnezzar in their face. Their temple was destroyed. Their sacrifices stopped. God felt distant, powerless, maybe even absent. There's a psalm written about this time. Psalm 137 says this, beside the rivers of Babylon, we sat and wept as we thought of Jerusalem. We put away our harps, hanging them on the branches of poplar trees. It says, but how can we sing the songs of the Lord while in a pagan land? They gave up worship, and they sat in their pain and their disappointment and just cried. They threw a pity party, said, we can't worship here in a pagan land. They were done being special. They forgot the miracles of provision, deliverance, promises, all those things. They're now seen through the exile lens. And I want you to imagine these people in this state are now set free, and God says, I want you to go rebuild my holy city, Jerusalem. What kind of a city does a slave build? What kind of a home does an exile build? Do you think they had grand, big, beautiful, God-like vision? No. They didn't believe they deserved the big, beautiful, holy city. So before they rebuilt the walls, before they rebuilt their homes, they had to build an altar. There wouldn't be any joy, there wouldn't be any beauty unless they first went back and reclaimed their identity. And this is my second point. Worship shapes our identity. Ezra 3:11, he is good. His faithful love for Israel endures forever. I love this. This is the song they sing. They say, wait a minute. First, he is good. Let's redefine him rightly. He is good and he loves us. This might be my life verse. I try to squeeze it in any message I can. 2 Corinthians 3:8 says, and we all, with unveiled face, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed into the same image from one degree of glory to another. For this comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. I heard a preacher once talking about this passage. He described it as sanctification by staring. We all, with unveiled faces, beholding the glory of the Lord, are being transformed. So we come to the altar, we give our sacrifice, we lift our face to the heavens, we say he is good and his love for Israel endures forever. And we behold this good God and he transforms us. In exile, they were defined by what they saw. They saw foreign kings and foreign gods. They saw chains of slavery. They saw loss. They lost their land. They lost their temple. They lost their customs. They lost their names. And this is why they had to change what they see. All they saw was loss, 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 loss. And God said, come, build an altar and lift your eyes. Change what you see, and I'll change who you are. So I just want to quickly share with you 5 ways that worship shapes our identity. 1, worship reorients our gaze to God's glory. When we worship, we behold God, his character, his faithfulness, his beauty. And beholding changes how we see everything else, including ourselves. Tozer said this, the man who has God for his treasure has all things in one. He'll not be moved by the approval or disapproval of men, even of his own household. And man, I feel that quote right now. I'm in a season where the enemy is trying so hard, I think it's all of us, to intimidate us. By the way, side note, I just learned this week. It's one of those things I heard a guy say, and I'm like, kicking myself that I wish I would have saw this. He said, in the story of David and Goliath, David never calls Goliath a giant. He calls him an uncircumcised Philistine. It was all the other Israelites that called him a giant. He said, who is this uncircumcised Philistine? He never called him a giant. He refused to give in to intimidation. He had God for his treasure, and he would not be moved. God is our North Star. When we look at him, we can see where we are and where we should go. Okay, if that way's north and I'm here, I need to go there. Okay, I'm reorienting my life to God. Okay, he's there. He's on the throne. I'm here serving, bowing, worshiping. It reorients where I am when I discover where he is. Worship fixes our eyes on the only unchanging reality, God. And that gaze reshapes how we define ourselves and our world. The second thing that worship does is it reminds us who we belong to. It reminds us who we belong to. In worship, we declare and remember, I belong to God. Exile made Israel forget who they belong to. Worship restored it. The very first commandment, I'm the Lord your God who brought you out of the land of Egypt, out of the house of slavery. You shall have no other gods before me. The first command is, you belong to me and only me. Worship reminds us who we belong to. Oh yeah, you're my God and I'm your person. I belong to you. N.T. Wright says this, worship is love on its knees before the beloved. And in that posture, we remember who we truly are, his beloved children. The third thing worship does is worship transforms us into his image. Beholding God doesn't just inform us, it changes us. We become like what we worship. Psalm 115:8 says, those who make idols become like them. So do all who trust in them. Those who make idols become like them. And this is obviously the negative picture, but it's a principle. You can flip that coin and say, okay, if I become like the idol that I worship, what happens when I worship Jesus? James Smith, he's a Canadian theologian, he says this, we are what we love, and our loves are shaped by what we worship. Liturgies, which is just a fancy word for our habits of worship, form our hearts and therefore our actions. We are what we love. The fourth thing that worship does, worship realigns our purpose and mission. When we know who God is and who we are, we know why we exist, to reflect his glory and join his mission. Isaiah 43:7 tells us, you can look it up, we are created for his glory. Worship realigns us to his mission because, spoiler alert, worship is the mission. Worship realigns us to the mission because it is the mission. This is probably my favorite quote of all time. This is John Piper. He says, missions isn't the ultimate goal of the church. Worship is. Missions exist because worship doesn't. I can remember there was a season in my life. I had just come back from Bible college. I'm serving at River City, and I was an arrogant young 20-something. I came back from Portland with this attitude of like, you're welcome. I'm here. Anytime you need me to preach, you're welcome. And God humbled me. And I was in this season of, I thought I'd go back. They'd say, wow, Nathan, you are so amazing. We have got to give you some sort of ministry. We've just got to. And it didn't happen that way. And all of a sudden, I'm hitting a brick wall. All my friends are getting positions at the church. And I'm like, I'm the only one who went to Bible college. Are you kidding me? And I'm throwing this pity party. And then I got corrected. And there was a time where I said, okay, I lay Isaac on the altar. I don't even want ministry. I don't want position. I just want to serve Jesus. And I want to serve my pastor. And so I started I'd show up to church early. I'd find an empty room nobody was in. And I would pray. I'd pray for the service. I'd pray for Kevin before he preached. I'd look out the window and I'd pray that, God, bring the neighborhood in. Bring them out of their homes. Bring them in here. And I can remember one time as I'm praying, I didn't know this quote at the time, but this came out of my heart. I just saw these lost people worshiping Jesus. And my prayer just began to be, Jesus, you deserve a bigger choir. You deserve a bigger choir. And then I got it. Like, that's the motivation of evangelism. It's not even my love for people. It's that he deserves a greater song. The mission is worship. And worship recenters us on God's glory as our purpose. Remember the famous quote from one of the early church fathers about the purpose of man. The purpose of man is to glorify God and enjoy him forever. This is the purpose of your life. And number 5, Worship heals the fractured self. Worship heals the fractured self. Exile fragments our identity. Worship restores wholeness by bringing us back to the one who made us. Oh, I love this one. Henry Nouwen says this: worship is the place where we let God tell us who we are. Worship is the place where we let God tell us who we are. Worship counters the lies of exile that say you're forgotten, worthless, alone. You come into worship and you hear the voice of God say, you are mine. I'm your God. You're my people. You are mine. Many of you know this story, but we'd been here for a few years, and Michelle was pregnant with our fourth. And we went to a normal doctor's appointment, and the doctor said, I'm seeing something funny in the pictures. I'm going to send you up to Spokane. Could be something, could be nothing. But I'm going to send you to Spokane to a specialist to just make sure that everything's okay. So I'm just the kind of, I don't worry about disease, sickness. It's like, it's always going to be okay. Like, oh yeah, I guess maybe you should have a helmet. I don't know. We'll be fine. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm just saying that's my attitude. It's all going to be fine. And so we're going to Spokane. I'm not thinking anything of it. And you know, if those of you that have gone through the process with pregnancy and all that, they have the technician that comes in, puts the jelly on the belly, and you look at the pictures. They don't say anything. The doctor comes in and tells you what's in the pictures. And so our guard is down, right? We're looking at the pictures, and this is fourth. So I kind of know the anatomy of the baby at this point, and I know what she's doing. You know, like they measure different parts of the baby, and there's how's the head, the this, that, they, you know. And she just stops. She doesn't wait for the doctor. She just says, I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat. We were not ready. And it was like a gut punch. And the whole church was praying for us. And man, it was such a quiet drive the way home from Spokane, while Michelle called the hospital here to schedule delivery. I dropped her off to take a nap because we were going to go in late that night to deliver a dead baby. And dropped her off to take a nap. And I went out to the church and I just cried. God. I didn't blame him, but I was like, God, this hurts so bad. And what about your people? They were praying, they were believing. I'm getting texts from people, God's going to raise your baby. And I'm just like, I totally believe in that. But at that point, I'm like, I don't really want to hear this. I'm just hurting. And we go through the process. And to be honest, we had friends who had miscarriages before. And I just didn't really, that's awful. But I didn't get how awful. And when you're holding that little baby and you're saying goodbye, you go, oh, wow, this is real pain. And I can remember coming to church that first Sunday, and we're in worship. And there was a song that was like oxygen to me at that time, and we sang that song. You might know it, the chorus. It goes, I will lean back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. I'll breathe deep and say that you are good. You're a love like no other. I can remember worshiping in my pain. You're good. You're a love like no other. You did not abandon me. You did not forget me. I knew I had a choice in that moment. You've all met people who've allowed pain to define their life. And I knew in that moment we had a choice. Do the typical Christian thing and leave your pain at home. Go to church and put a smile on. Glory to God. I got faith. Or you bring your pain with you. And you put your pain, this is how my mind was. In my mind, this is what I did. I took my pain and I said, pain, you sit right there and you watch me worship Jesus. And I'm going to let this define who you are. And I said, I'm leaning back in the loving arms of a beautiful Father. Because I knew if I didn't take that thing to the altar, it would define me. It would change me. It would twist me. It would cause my heart to be hard. I had to bring it to the altar and let worship redefine this thing. Refuge Church, God is opening new doors of purpose and opportunity to us. But before we can walk into new things, God's got to deal with the residue of exile on your life. And can I say, just as a side, you remember at the end of the passage, it says that the older Israelites wept when they saw the foundation of the new temple. They wept because it didn't look like it used to look like. It's not going to look like it used to look like. But it's going to be good. We got to shake off the residue of the past. God wants to redefine the seasons of disappointment, the seasons of unmet expectations. Man, I feel this thing so strong about an orphan spirit. Some of us are still not convinced. Even, I have a whole lot more grace for the Israelites in the wilderness after this whole building thing. Because it's like God does a miracle and then they don't believe, and then God does another miracle and they don't believe. And I'm like, with this, it's like we see this impossible thing. God does a miracle. We step through the impossible thing, and now there's another impossible thing, and we're scared again. And he does a miracle, and then there's the next impossible thing, and we do it over. And I'm going, okay, at some point, we're not orphans. At some point, we trust that he's going to do this thing. At some point, it's beyond my understanding. I just say, you're God, I'm not. We're your special. You take care of your children. When it looked like this deal was done, I would walk around, when it wasn't going to happen, I walked around that building and I said, you are a good father, and a good father provides a home for his children. So God wants to deal with that orphan spirit in you and I. He wants to shake off the residue of exile. There are things that God is calling you and I to build. But if we don't deal with the slavery, orphan mindset, we won't build it the way we're called to build it. We'll build like a bunch of slaves, like a bunch of orphans. Something small, something weak, uninspiring. But God's saying that's not who you are. Shake it off and embrace a new identity. And so we take our pain. We take our unmet, we don't try to leave it somewhere. We take it to the altar and we say, pain, watch this. So what's the thing you're hanging on to? It could be something you're going through right now. I want you to just hold it in your hands. You just close your eyes with me and hold that thing in your hands. I want you to picture we're going to the altar with it. We're not ignoring it. We're not denying that we're hurt. We're not denying that we're disappointed. We're taking it to the altar. We're saying, pain, watch this.